Yeah, I've got some more. As well. Read a bit of stuff out.
Good. One woo.
Yeah, one woo.
One woo. One woo wonder.
Can we get a woo? Thank you very much. That's it. Well, see ya. Right. Well, thanks for such a wonderful turnout on a Tuesday night in sunny East London. Very happy to be here. We tried to do this 2 years ago when we put out the first book, and I can't remember what happened, but something stopped it. And so we're finally, with the second book, we're finally able to do this, and it's great so many people turned up and got the book, and I hope you like it. I love it. I'd have bought it even if we hadn't put it out. Paul's something special. Yeah, he does. What he does is walks his.
I said you overdone the booze already, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, you did give me that 50 quid. You said pick me up a bit. So yeah, I've got
It's alright, it's fake.
Just sorry, a little bit of fluff before we get into the general banter. But no, it's great. I've known Paul since the 80s, late 80s, I hasten to add. When he used to basically throw me around at the front of the gigs because he was bigger than me. And he's always been a really, really good mate and a nice chap. And put on lots of gigs. He used to put on gigs at the Roby, the Opera on the Green, the Red Eye. And I just always, he was always there. Paul was always there at a lot of the gigs. We liked the same sort of bands. It was like but then we lost touch for quite a while. Paul started doing compilations. He had a record label called Snakebite City. He put out some wonderful compilations with some brilliant bands on. Sort of just like 20 bands that he liked. No reason, didn't make any money, but just good fun. And it was just basically doing what you like, and I think that's still what he does, and that's what's so nice about Paul. And what he does is like he actually enjoys the walks as much as you do, and he enjoys this as much as you do, and as much as I do. So working with him on the books with Damaged Goods has sort of been great fun. We're just having a laugh, really. We're getting away with murder. I mean, we do it anyway, so it's quite nice to sort of do stuff like this, and it's lovely when people actually like it as well. That's been the ethics with sort of Damaged Goods records. I put out records that I think I like. Normally 500 people might like them, sometimes more people like them, sometimes they don't. Some you win, some you lose. Anyway, moving on to Paul. Obviously the Derelict London thing sort of kicked off in the early 2000s, and the website and everything else, and then obviously his nice break for him was Random House doing the first Derelict London book, which sold very, very well, and made him a proper author. And followed up by the Rivers book, which I'm sure you probably know, or if not, you should look up, and the revised book. And we were sort of, we've been talking, we've been down the pub, surprisingly, talking bollocks as usual, and we talked about a venues book, saying how many wonderful venues there were over the years that had sort of gone and everything else, and we should do a book. And it was sort of like, are you still tied to Random House and things like that? So we got past that. They weren't interested. It was far too niche for them, which is wonderful, because niche for them is big for me. And therefore we did the first book, and you know that story, and it's great to be on the second volume. It's a sad volume, but at the same time things regenerate. London changes all the time, everywhere. Look at this place, look at where we are now. There was nothing here years ago. You could have a curry, you could have a beer, and that was about it. Now look at it. For good or for bad, whatever you think about it, it is evolving, and everything evolves in London, and nothing stays the same. So I'd like to introduce you to Paul Tallon. I know you know him. Paul wrote the book, and we're just going to chew over a few venues and have a chat, and obviously it's great having Tim here. Wonderful set, lovely to have Tim because obviously he played both the cover style venues on our two books, and he's a wonderful chap, and it's just lovely. Yeah.
I dispute that.
Yeah. Well, it's just sort of. Quite nice, isn't it? Really.
Let's go away and have a hug.
Yeah. Let's have a big hug to everyone. Anyway, so Paul, great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We got the
great
book.
to have everyone here as well. Yeah, it's fantastic. I tried to say hello to as many people who are standing up round the back, but yeah, big hello to all the old people sitting at the front as well. So it's very nice. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
The little chairs are lovely. So yeah, Paul. We're sort of obviously just put me there. I didn't even get a swig. So this is why we're here. The second book. We were going to sort of just have a general chat about sort of the book. We don't base everything around Finsbury Park, obviously, because Volume 3 is going to be a bit of a struggle because we've used the Roby, which was over the road to the Rainbow. And if you want to know, that is an Osmonds gig. That was if you go in on if you get a digital version of it, you'll find out that the girl at the front holding the poster up, it's Donny Osmond. And what a wonderful photo of kids that couldn't get into an Osmonds gig.
And I didn't take that photograph.
No, me neither. No, and I wasn't there, and I'd like to have been there, but I wasn't there. And Crazy Horses Live would have been probably something to at that time would have probably been quite good. The rest of it might have been a bit. Anyway, so we were gonna sort of talk about the Rainbow really to kick off with. We're going to do the cover stars first. So we're going to kick off with the Rainbow.
Right,
so
okay.
Take it away, Paul.
Well, we could have a little reading from the book to start us off. Everyone loves a little book reading. Trouble is when I do these book readings, I go off onto wild tangents, but you'll love that. You know that in a way. So, right, so the Rainbow Theatre / the Finsbury Park Astoria. And I'll introduce this in the book about, arguably one of the most important places to feature in this second book. And the Finsbury Park Astoria opened as a cinema in 1930 with advertisements for the grand opening variety show Gala claiming a seating capacity for 4,000 people. During the late 1950s and early 60s, in common with many larger cinemas, the by now 3,000 capacity Astoria also hosted live bands. That's where we're getting stuck in now, usually with 2 shows per evening. The Beatles played 34 times between 1963 and 1965. Some of those dates were part of the 1963 Christmas shows, along with Cilla Black and Rolf Harris. And
you're allowed to say Rolf Harris. I think we can say Rolf Harris. Yeah. We all grew up with him.
Chuck Berry, the Rolling Stones, Lulu, Jimi Hendrix Experience, Sonny and Cher, the Animals, the Beach Boys, and Ella Fitzgerald were some of the many acts performed there during the 1960s. It was here in 1967 that Jimi Hendrix used lighter fuel and burnt his guitar on stage. Could have done that just then, actually. Come on, maybe not. Yeah. And subsequently made that part of his act. The venue was renamed the Odeon in 1970, and in 1971 the Byrds were the last band to play the cinema before it permanently moved over to hosting live music. It reopened as a Rainbow Theatre a couple of months later when The Who performed at the opening night, having first appeared at the Astoria 5 years earlier. Late that year, Frank Zappa was pushed off stage by a fan, causing multiple fractures. In 1979, fans of The Clash smashed 200 seats. The Who returned in 1979 with new drummer Kenny Jones making his live debut for the band. Just about every touring act during the 1970s played the Rainbow. It was the sensational Alex Harvey Band, AC/DC, The Clash, David Bowie, Van Halen, Sparks, Roxy Music, The Damned, Rainbow, of course. We've got a Rainbow advert in there as well.
Confusing night.
Yeah. And The Police, Wings, Dolly Parton. So it's a nice old eclectic mix there. Recordings of concerts by Stiff Little Fingers, Genesis, Kool and the Gang, Focus, Van Morrison, T-Rex, Greta, we shouldn't mention that either. Sweet, Ramones and Queen made the way onto live albums. So yeah, that's it. It's a live album, Ramones. You know, I'm sure everyone here's got that already. And so on. It was used in film scenes for Breaking Glass, A Great Rock and Roll Swindle, Slade in Fame. Yes, yeah, now we're talking, eh?
Hard to beat, classic.
Yeah. And financial issues caused the closure of the Rainbow. The last ever concert there was by Elvis Costello and the Attractions. Christmas Eve in 1981. Disused, apart from the odd boxing match a few years after. These days, it's now the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God. It seems to be a way a lot of these big old cinema venues are gone. Yeah, they're either churches or gyms. But
it's a good Sunday morning out if you fancy it.
Yeah.
So, and you played there, Tim?
I played there school in Iggy Pop.
Yeah. Oh, you did that already, haven't
Yeah,
you?
I've already done that.
Sorry,
Yeah,
So you've done that?
if I can immediately digress, because you said that was an Osmonds gig there.
Yeah.
You've also got.
You were there.
Is the marquee in this?
It's in the first volume. Yeah.
Yeah, the first
All
one.
marquees.
The
in the
second
first volume,
marquee on
Border.
what is it? Charing Cross.
Border Street.
That was the third
The
marquee.
third marquee.
Yeah,
the
third,
third
yeah.
marquee was that in the
Charing
Charing Cross
yeah.
Road. I once played a gig there. Donny Osmond was supposed to play at the marquee. He cancelled for some reason, and a couple of days beforehand he cancelled, and for some reason they asked ranting punk poet Attila the Stockbroker to play instead of Donny Osmond, and he asked my band Cheap to support him. So I went on stage at the marquee with like 20 punk rockers and 200 confused Donny Osmond fans who hadn't heard that he cancelled. So that was quite memorable. I didn't go down very well.
Did you do a cover? Did you cover anything?
Sadly, no.
Really? Oh, the opportunity was there.
Mr. Trick could have sold some merch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Wow.
Right, back on course.
So,
Tangents,
I mean, obviously, you know, I don't know how many, you all look quite young. So I'm guessing not many of you went to Rainbow, but did anyone go to the Rainbow? Yeah, me and all. Yeah. Anyone, any wonderful gigs you went to at the Rainbow? Anything? Jam. Yeah, I went to the Jam. I slept out all night trying to get a ticket. And I didn't need to because everyone that just got the tube down
Just
in the morning got a ticket.
Yeah, always going off on interrupting here, but I've also got the Michael Sobel Sports Centre in the second volume, and the Jam did a couple of nights there, and Weller was getting hacked off, support bands were getting heckled and all that, and he's, I'm going to call this a day, you know, at some point. And all these Jam fans came piling down the road from the Michael Sobel Sports Centre down to Finsbury Park Station. But that day also at the Rainbow, the Exploited were playing, and after singing their Fucker Mod and all that, it all kicked off at a station, funny enough.
They were happy days when we had cults where we all like to hit each other. They don't get that now. Everyone likes everything. You ask anyone what they like, and they like
a bit of everything.
Yeah, I like everything. And it's like, oh, that's really boring. You've got to hate something. You've got to love something, you know. But no, you don't have to. Obviously, peace and love and whatever. But it is a shame that the cult thing has gone the way of the. Well, I don't know, something that's not here anymore. VHS tape.
You've only got the whole charts. You just hate the charts and everything else. Is
Apart from the heritage charts.
apart from the heritage,
Tim's
there,
number
great.
54 at the moment.
There's a
There's
great
vote
song
for
for
him on the
54.
heritage charts for Mike Reid. Yeah.
Yep.
I believe you are.
Forget about Mike Reid, but just vote for that.
Yeah, check out the heritage chart. We got the Lurkers to number 5 recently.
54 is not bad though.
54's not bad. Yeah, I wish I was 54.
If you all vote for it, it could be up to 53 next week.
So that's the Rainbow. So we're going to move on to the cover of the first book, as we didn't get a chance to sort of chat about it. And there's actually more funny stories really on the Roby. Do you want to talk about the Roby?
Yes.
Yeah?
Where Tim mentioned this earlier, like I've managed to get a very flattering photograph of the Roby on the front cover there. I was putting a gig on, and Mum was saying, "What are you doing in London and all that?" And I said, "This is this is the venue I'm putting gigs on." So I made it look nice. But in reality, the Roby wasn't always that great. You know, a lot of us miss it. of course we miss it, but it was a bit grotty. The toilets, and I remember once I turned up there, and there was always dog shit on the floor, and you don't get these nice places, but there was these German shepherds on security, and there's this lovely dogs. Don't get me wrong, but their shit was on the floor, and I said to him, "Oh, there's this dog shit on the floor, so you're a promoter, you clear it up." So anyway, let's read from about Sir George Robey. I apologise in advance. I start shooting off in all directions here. 1870s pub was originally called the Clarence and renamed the Sir George Robey in the 1960s, named after an English music hall comedian. Who, when I do my Isle of Dogs walk, I talk about this like all the old grounds of Millwall Football Club. And George Robey actually played for Millwall. He was it was full of tinners and dockers and all that, playing for Millwall. But Robey, he loved sport so much that he used to play, for major teams. And that's why he became a Sir, because by the time he died in the 1950s, he raised £2 million for charity. So anyway, that's a little tangent there, but named after a Millwall player. So who were north of the river, not south of the river originally as well. So just get that point straight as well. Hack off a load of Millwall fans, but any Millwall fans will know that's true anyway. So it's not hacking anyone off, is it? So I always do that. As anyone has got Arsenal fans, I'll say, what about Millwall then? Anyway, during the late 80s, this place was a venue for any up-and-coming bands with a Ford Transit and on the toilet circuit, up and down the country. Folk musician Joe Giltrap ran the Robey in the early 80s, and Christy Moore, the Men They Couldn't Hang, Alien Sex Fiend, T'Pau, yes, and the Pogues. Not yes, but T'Pau. And the Pogues were some of the acts that he hosted before leaving in 1987. The venue continued largely unchanged into late mid-90s, and acts included Hawkwind, Steve Marriott, Gong, Blur, No Doubt, Snuff, and The Exploited. And during this period, the Robey was also popular with promoters that hosted all-day punk and ska gigs. In 1989, I hosted a punker weekend that was so busy that I had UK Subs, Culture Shock, The Price, Guitar Gangsters, Red London. There was just loads of bands, and Dick from Culture Shock said, I've got some mates from Germany here, can they play? I said, yeah, go on. And there were so many bands just playing that weekend, and it did get a bit lively. And the old Bill were not very chuffed about it, and they had to sort of shut off a bit of the road outside, and everyone was spilling outside. I do say, everyone had a love-hate relationship with the place, especially the appalling toilets. Certainly attracted great bands, but it was none too salubrious at times. I think you've got that idea now. Then I remember watching the singer TV Smith slipping over someone's vomit whilst on stage, and that wasn't exploited all day. It's probably like Sick Boy Federation or something before, But,
Sick on the bus.
Sick on the bus, yeah. Freshers from the police.
I kept my balance though, Paul.
Yeah.
I didn't go over. I didn't go over.
I thought you went over.
Yeah, the top hat on, didn't you? The top hat, the umbrella helped you, I think.
I once slipped over on Wayne County's sick in Leicester, so I had practice.
Yeah.
You've been around.
I tell you what, you name the stars, I've slipped over on their sick.
Find me someone who haven't slipped over on this sick.
Hopefully not ours tonight.
Yeah. The night is young.
Yeah, and so are we. And we talk about the all-nighters here. Nick Hornby said to base a Harry Lauder music venue in his High Fidelity book on the Sir George Robey. Taken over by a mean fiddler group in the mid-1990s, renamed the Powerhouse after Vince Power. That didn't last very long, and then there was one of unauthorised building work. It lay derelict for years. Lots of photos on my website. I bust in there on the slide and took a load of photos while it's all derelict in there. But unfortunately now it's all been demolished, and there's a shiny Premier in on the site. So Powerhouse, that's what the like Vince Power had that one up in the Pied Bull as well in Islington.
There.
I got kicked out on one of my own. I was putting a gig on there once, got kicked out of my own gig, Richard and Laurie, you know that one there, don't you? Some bloke in a headlock across the table of drinks, and I think it was Vince Power's mates on the next table as well, and I got ejected. And Big Boy Tomato, bless him, they said they refused to go on stage unless I was let back in, So I was suffering outside, drinking loads of pints of snake bite. But And now Dingwalls, he's bought Dingwalls.
Played there.
Yeah, but he cannot use the name Dingwalls apparently, so he's had to rename it a Powerhouse.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So the Powerhouse is now like 1, 2, 3?
Third on, yeah.
Third on,
yeah.
third different name for the
Yeah,
Powerhouse.
and the one in Angel, the Pied Bull, it's now Halifax Bank.
Are you allowed to use that?
And that
Yeah.
was a great venue, wasn't it? There was some brilliant.
Yeah, it was,
gigs.
yeah.
The first
Yeah.
Pied Ball was brilliant.
Mm.
I mean, there were loads of
Yeah,
great gigs.
that's
But,
all in here as well, of
Yeah,
course.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You'll find it all in the
Yeah.
book. Yeah. Oh, that's the
Don't
first
give it
one.
away.
Yeah, don't want to.
Don't give away
no
the ending.
spoilers. No spoilers. Yeah.
Well, the
So-
ending is, there are no more venues.
Yeah, and the Roby, the toilet ate it, and the toilet basically did eat it. A bit like the Falcon. The same thing happened with the Falcon, pretty much. The toilet basically ate the venue.
Yeah.
You know, it's not quite in the book that, but pretty much it
That's
was.
definitely happened.
Yeah, it's just everything.
Folklore, isn't it?
Bit like Stranger Things. Everything sort of like headed towards the toilet.
Everything headed out of the toilet when I was there.
Yeah.
I literally walked in once and the toilets were flowing out of the toilets
Yeah.
at Roby,
Yeah.
across the venue, out the front door
Yeah.
and into the street.
Yeah.
There was a pipe going out the cistern that was aiming right at the bloody door as you went in. It might have been that exploiter gig.
Yeah, it probably was, yeah. I think it's something venue managers should take into account, you know, and perhaps try and copy.
Well, we remember it. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, I don't remember much
Actually, there
about
is
some of the other
generally the
venues.
worse the toilets, the better the venue. I mean, the
Yeah.
better the gig. I don't know
Yeah,
why, it is, but
yeah.
think CBGBs.
Yeah, well, that was.
the crap. Excuse the pun, but crap toilets, good venue.
I have never seen anything as terrible as
It's scary.
CBGB's.
Grown men run away from
CBGB's.
You would-
That's outside the M25.
Yeah, I think that's sort of that's North London, isn't it? Yeah.
Still
CBGB's. I saw Mega City 4, and in 1991, Mega City 4 and the Manics the following day. And the toilets were just this appalling. They had no doors on them because people would take drugs. And there was this bloke in there. He must have been like 80 stone, and he was having a shit, and he was going. And I just walked in, and it was just like, oh my god, this is the worst thing. And the funniest thing was that CBS, in their wisdom, made Manic Street Preachers little wee things that you know to stop fags going down the toilet, so you could piss on the Manics. I got the feeling they weren't loved over there. But
Not
anyway.
You Love Us.
No, it wasn't You Love Us. You Love to Piss. Yeah. And right, so moving on from that, so one from the new book, one that you know more about than I do, the Albemarle Youth Club.
Yeah, a lot of these places we've mentioned so far have been, on the radar of a lot of people. If you haven't been to, you've heard of them. But I'd like to get a few sort of unsung heroes in this. This was just a youth club in Harold Hill near Romford, the Albemarle. And they put a lot of gigs on, especially in the 1970s. And this is what I wrote here. Unfortunately, there was an unhappy ending on it. Well, the gig didn't fucking start, basically, but anyway, we shall come to that. The roll call of bands that played here included Black Sabbath, Babe Ruth, Man, Hawkwind, Spinning Wheel, Kilburn and the High Roads, Judas Priest, Budgie, The Sweet, Scorpions, and the Wasps. So quite a mixture of bands there. Wasps still going now, just reformed. A concert in 1972 brought tragedy to the Albemarle, drawing the attention of the national media when the band Storm, no, I've never heard of them either, one of 5 acts playing that day brought along a homemade cannon designed to emit smoke and sweeps into the audience. You know this is the way it's going. It gets worse, or better or worse. Outside in the car park, the band's roadie was testing out a cannon using a mixture of sugar and weed killer as explosive, with a taper made of string soaked in wax. The cannon burst, killing him, and soon, no laughing now, but yeah, it's true, yeah. The cannon burst, killing him, and seriously injuring a few others, as well as blowing out the windows of the club and vehicles in the car park. And now it's a housing estate. But
The gig went on though.
I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, the show mustn't go on after that. Yeah.
You've got
Yeah,
a
there's a
weed
lot-
killer in their gardens, do they?
Yeah, you didn't play there then, Tim.
Yeah. So it's a few little anecdotes like that that get a little bit lost in history. And when I spent a lot of time down the British Library reading all his local newspapers and so on to, getting some interesting stories that I've always forgotten.
You wonder if the people living there actually know that history.
Yeah, in Albemarle House, you
Yeah,
see.
look at
Yeah, it looks very nice.
What was that pub in Wildstone where the Who did their Meaty Beaty Big and Bouncy cover, the railway? That's all been demolished, but they've done a nice little tribute. Daltrey House, yeah? They fucking spelled Daltrey wrong, haven't they?
Yeah, so it's wonderful when they knock something down and just stick up a plaque, and it's like, yeah, that'll do. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we've made affordable housing for everyone. So, all right, well, that was that one.
Yeah.
So the marquee. So this is quite a good one because it's in the first book, and there was obviously more than one. In fact, there was more than 5, as Paul will maybe try and tell you now.
Maybe, yeah. I have to sort of summarise this because if you stick something on some of these music groups on Facebook and you put a photograph of what's now the Weatherspoons at the Charing Cross Road, I still had some good times there. And some people say it's not as good as the original one, and they're referring to Wardour Street, but the original one was actually in Oxford Street. It was a jazz club, an early R&B, like Rolling Stones, all that sort of stuff. So, the one in Charing Cross Road was the third one. But of course, the most iconic one would have been, the Wardour Street one from, 1964 to 1988. And, I was lucky enough to be there a few days just before it closed. And like when I talk about the bands that played in there, it's an endless list. This is always when I bring up an example, like someone had a go at me because I didn't mention them and said, "Oh, he didn't mention my band." So I mention here Wardour Street. I said, you've got, Moody Blues, The Who, yes, David Bowie, Jethro Tull, Jimi Hendrix Experience, Pink Floyd, Small Faces, in the 70s, Sex Pistols, The Clash, The Damned, The Stranglers, Generation X, The Police, Buzzcocks, The Jam, Joy Division, The Cure. Then we go into Duran Duran, AC/DC, Motorhead, Genesis, Iron Maiden, Pendragon and ZZ Top. And you can't give an exhaustive list of who's played there. This guy contacts me, so you didn't mention me. I played there, Spiz.
I play
You
everywhere.
can't not mention Spears.
He just mentioned in other,
He gets enough mentions.
Yeah, he gets enough mentions. So then it moved on to the Marquee, an old cinema in Charing Cross Road that's now a Weatherspoons and Montague Pike. The opening night featured hard rock band Kiss. And then he had Stone Roses, Voice of the Beehive, Johnny Thunders, ropey gig that was, I tell you. Didn't play Chinese rocks, but he might have been taking it, I don't know. But anyway, the Cult, New Model Army, Jane's Addiction, Soundgarden, Aerosmith, Gary Newman, Sepultura. I talk about Motley Crue, played a warm-up for Monsters of Rock at Donington. They foolishly call themselves the Foreskins. That's a great, piss take name, innit? But some of the wrong crowd turned up for that, as you can imagine. And we can explain that afterwards if anyone doesn't, and then people think, if you go into Weatherspoons, it will say Final Home of the Marquee Club. But it wasn't actually. There were several after that. 3 of them after that. Now, why haven't I covered the 4th one in here? Because it's still a venue. It's still a venue. The Academy in Islington, in Angel, with shopping centre. But Dave Stewart bought the rights to the Marquee name. Dave Stewart from Eurythmics, of course, and he set up the Marquee Club. It lasted barely a year. Up at when it was up in the Angel shopping centre. Then it went to Leicester Square. That lasted barely a year in an old nightclub. you'd go to the third floor for that, you know, and it was all like a bit trendy.
Rubbish,
sort of-
yeah, I mean, they're all pretty shit.
Yeah, we had a few, as I mentioned, a few bands like the Magic Numbers, Dirty Vegas, Art Brute, good old mates of mine, yeah, put their first ever gig on, you know. And yes, yeah. Ravionettes, Ordinary Boys, Wheatus, yeah, David McAlmont, yeah, fairly credible. But then that shut down after barely a year. Then it moved to Upper St Martin's Lane in Covent Garden, and no one even remembers this. When I was doing some research on this, I looked at a list of bands, I've never bloody heard of anyone. And it was really Rent-A-Crowd, and it lasted for about 6 months. And it was Plum Promotions, used to do some stuff at the Water Rats, still going, a still good venue, but Plum Promotions, they had their, they had it going for a few months. And I think how I had to word this in a book, I just said Essex Rock Band torn asunder had the honour of being the last ever band to headline the Marquee.
It was almost a pay-to-play venue.
Yeah.
It was one of those where there's been many venues over the years that got to a stage where they were struggling, or they got some Jack the Lad promoter in who decided that you could play, but you had to buy tickets. Well, sell your tickets, and then the band had to sell the
Ring
tickets.
your coach for those mates,
just to get
and you
the
bring
money.
your coach load of mates.
Yeah, and that was the only.
And you'll be big in London, in front of your mates.
And all those venues died, luckily, because that was a really
Rock
shit way.
Garden.
Because if you're going to put a band on, have the gumption to actually pay them and actually put them on. And if you fuck up, it's your fault. You put the band on. It's not their fault. They've got to come all the way. They're rehearsing. Tim's obviously been in this situation. Yeah, I'm sure you haven't paid to play.
Well,
but
sure, I did pay to play. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the Rock Garden. The Rock Garden
for
was
example,
notorious
yeah.
in Covent Garden for that. And Manic Street Preachers early on paid to play there.
But I still owe you for tonight, don't I?
Yeah, yeah, fucking right.
Lots of happy memories of the Marquee.
Yeah,
I mean, both I only did the 2 Marquees, the second and the third, but I saw a lot of bands there. I mean, I saw AC/DC at the Wardour Street Marquee.
Wow.
And there was 3 rows of chairs at the front. People were sitting down for AC/DC in 1976.
In Wardour Street,
and old Angus
really?
was doing their own thing, and they were sitting there.
Wow.
I saw a Johnny Moped at the third Marquee.
Did you talking of sitting down?
Now there's a great band.
And a magic moment when Kirsty MacColl, who was dancing down the front, got up, put her handbag on the stage, climbed up and did Darling, Let's Have Another Baby.
That was at the
Charing Cross Road,
Charing Cross Road one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
That was a wonderful
That
moment,
was wonderful, yeah.
Amazing.
Kirsty MacColl singing with Johnny Moped
Yeah.
was... And it's great because there's a chap here, Andy P, who is here somewhere, who was videoing that. With tapes about that big, obviously in 1991, and he was changing tapes at that point. It just ran out, so it just finished something like I Love Edwina Curry, and he was changing the tape when when the magic moment happened. So
it
was
will
actually
live large in my memory.
yeah, I was there. Yeah,
He did love Edwina Curry, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah.
The song called-
We don't want to go off on that too much.
Yeah,
here,
well,
but,
he liked. I think he liked eggs and he liked Edwina Curry. So yeah.
And he liked
Match made in heaven, really. Yeah. I think it was like Oh, that's good then. Wow. Sean Otway.
doing it all way, yeah.
Can you hear my body talking?
Headbutts.
yeah.
Right,
Anyway,
nothing jokes.
have we
Well, we've done the Marquee, I think.
Oh,
there was,
okay, so-
various.
does anyone? Hang on, this is a Q&A, isn't it? We put Q&A, didn't we? So okay. So
I thought you put talking bollocks.
Yeah, well, no, Q&A, talking bollocks, whatever. Has anyone got any cues? Look at you. You're scared.
Just
Don't
warming
be
up
scared.
there.
We're lovely. We're really nice. Paul's sweet. No questions?
Which venue do you miss the most?
Ooh. Yeah, it'd have to be the sort of the top 5, I think, really, for me. The Roby, the Powerhouse in Islington, to 12 Bar was a great one as well. More recently, well, that's a good few years now. Well, Clarendon, yeah, here we go. So you're livening up now, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Well, from the back.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, right at the back, yeah.
Not dead yet.
Really?
Yeah, there was some great little venues out and about. Yeah, obviously like bigger ones at Astoria, which we'll come on to. But yeah, the Cricketers in the Oval, always like that one.
Falcon.
Yeah, the Falcon, I went to a lot. Yeah, that was good fun. Yeah, it was.
What?
Yeah, Lyceum.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Lyceum,
Yeah.
which is in the new
I
book.
was
Yeah.
banned from the Lyceum.
Was you?
Yeah, they wouldn't even let me go in as an audience member.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why someone
Did they have a picture of you?
Yeah, well, here he is again.
Yeah, I see him again. Yeah, he's trying to get in again.
I did get in, but I'm not officially.
There were some great gigs at the Lyceum, though, wasn't there? I mean, if you remember back to John. Who was it? Kurd.
Yeah.
John Kurd's promotions on Sunday nights. Obviously, it was a dark day for the Lyceum, as in like it wasn't the theatre day. And he put on some brilliant, punk sort of lineups in 81, 82, probably 3 or 4 years of that. There was just some amazing bills. I mean, if you look back now, you just like,
A lot of anti-nowhere league though,
a
wasn't
lot of anti-nowhere league, surprisingly, as he looked after them and managed them to put out their first single. But yeah, it was that sort of thing. But they were really good. Yeah, I loved the Lyceum. Yeah, I remember seeing the Dam. I saw an awful lot of gigs at the Lyceum. Yeah, wonderful place, and obviously does still exist, but doesn't do gigs. And I think it's Lion King.
The Lion King, yeah.
Lion King,
Great
Lion
band.
King, which
Great
is
band, the Lion
which is
King.
lovely. Yeah, I haven't seen them.
A lot of
Whatever.
early stuff, yeah.
Do you support them?
Yeah, I'll spoil it, mate.
Okay, so any more questions? Oh, well, there's one, look.
Hi, are there any venues in here that you never went to, but having researched them, you wish you had?
Yeah, there's that's a bit before my time, but a lot of these places in the 50s, well, late 50s into the 60s, lots of old cinema circuit, they've been fantastic. To go to those sort of package tours of, whether it's when the Beatles did a package tour, like in Woolwich, you'd have had the Beatles doing a few songs, you'd have had Roy Orbison, Jerry and the Pacemakers, Des O'Connor comparing. We couldn't get him tonight, and
He's a bit tired.
yeah, still in the green room, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry. No, you're fine.
But that would have been fascinating, just see that. All those gigs, those sort of package tour gigs as well at the cinemas, I mentioned in the second volume, they all started about 6:30, and bands would do a few songs, and then there'd be another show at 8:30. So I say Beatles played 34 times at a Rainbow, probably played 17 dates. So
It's amazing.
Yeah,
34 times at the
Yeah.
Rainbow.
Yeah.
It's astounding. Yeah.
It did bring a little sentimental moment to me seeing you're at the Romford Odeon, where I was brought up in Romford.
Yeah.
And you got a picture of Cliff Richard playing the Romford Odeon,
Mhm.
and I once queued up to see Cliff Richard's Summer Holiday at the Romford Odeon, the film, and I queued up for an hour, and I was just getting in, and it was full. I got turned off. So I didn't see Cliff or the film.
Big result then, wasn't it?
It's a lovely film, don't be wrong. Yeah, come on, think back to innocent times. Yeah, not everything's nasty and
I was
horrible.
25 at the time.
I still haven't seen it. Yeah. So, any more questions?
Denmark Street. Denmark Street has been like a centre of music. There's a lot of venues down there that we've all gone.
Yeah.
Well, the 12 bar was the sort of the big one, but that didn't actually start until like the 90s. It was like a sort of social club originally for people who worked at the guitar shops, and originally it was what's known as Little Japan at one point in the Little Tokyo, in the 1920s, and then a lot of music publishers set up down there, like there's Wright Music. Mr. Wright, he wasn't getting enough publicity for the bands that he was publishing, or acts he was publishing, so he set up Melody Maker down there. You had NME started off down there, and then lots of music publishers. Mills Music, that was a big one. Turned down Paul Simon because it wasn't commercial enough, and Reg Dwight used to work there, obviously later to become Elton John, wrote Your Song on the Roof apparently of that building. But it was, there was the Alley Cat recently, little venue down the basement, but not so many music venues. And obviously I do a tour and we talk about all these venues when we're walking around there, and you always have to point out the gruesome things, so it's always sort of music related, guitar sort of places. And there's an empty place that's been converted into a restaurant. But we want to eat in this bloody restaurant. It was a job centre before, yeah? Well, yeah, you laugh at that, but it was a job centre where Dennis Nilsson worked in, wasn't it? Where he had a Christmas do, and he took in this cauldron of, to do some sort of, whatever they were doing for a Christmas party. And, and it turned out the police said he'd been, boarding up people's body parts in it, so yeah. I think that's in the Scotland Yard Museum now, so...
Moving swiftly on.
Come on.
You there?
Changing tone.
Yeah.
So just a question about like venues like the 100 Club, who are really struggling and they're appealing for support. What in your opinion, do they need to do?
Well, the 100 Club...
They're not really.
No, because every gig seems to be getting sold out pretty much, to be fair. Yeah, and they are doing okay. I know Converse gave them quite a bit of money a few years ago. That is one venue that's doing pretty well. My mum used to go there in the early 1950s. It was the Humphrey Littleton Club, 100 Oxford Street. And it's still doing okay.
It's private. It did go through a very bad period. They had problems with the fire brigade because they're in a cellar in Oxford Street, and you can only get so many fire engines and So they knocked it down to 200 at one point, and the capacity.
It's just gone up 300.
It's gone up to 300, 300 plus guests, so 330 I think. So it's actually improved a little bit. Because there's always room in there. Whenever it's sold out, you can still make a space, But it at one point, I remember I've been to gigs there where there's been knocking on 800 people in there, and it's kind of cosy. In modern times, obviously, it would be a super spreader.
But what else do you think we should do? What else do venues need to do to stay alive, to attract people?
What should they do to attract people?
I
guess they are doing what they do. I mean, obviously every venue's sort of trying to do their best and trying to put on the best bands they can put on, and obviously it's a bit of a struggle. But let's not be. We're not. These books are about. They're a positive thing.
We're celebrating what we've had, but we've got to celebrate what we've still got as well.
They're not negative. This isn't negative. This isn't like, oh my God, everything's shut. There's plenty of venues that are opening up, and there's always something else, and there'll always be something else. Because wherever there's bands, there'll be places to play. And there's nothing negative about these. This is historical. It's a bit sad that I love the Bull and Gate. I loved, the same venues Paul loved.
Bloody restaurant, isn't it?
Yeah, now it's a fucking poncy restaurant in, you don't want to go in there. And even the toilets ain't where they're supposed to be, are they? But, it's not, these books they're not negative. This is historical. This is about great venues we all loved. And it's quite nice to be reminded about them.
But if you love the grotty venues, it's still, like Bird's Nest in Deptford, that's a good old school, decent, and it's free to get in most of the time as well. But there could be more people there.
That's a wonderful venue.
We could turn this the other way and say, people should just go there, and just. Even if it's a band, just take a punt on it and go and see them. You haven't heard of them.
There's loads of places popping up. There's especially around this part of East London, and obviously we're all far too old to learn new tricks and all these new venues. But there's loads of little bands playing all over the place, and it's great. And it's London evolves. London always evolves, and everywhere evolves. Different towns. You could do this same book in different areas. Probably wouldn't be quite as many.
We discussed that, and that'd be too complicated.
It would be a bit. We started the spreadsheet, and it's not going to happen. But no, I mean,
never going to be a book.
No, but you must feel the same.
Restaurants.
Well, you say that, Tim. That's quite great. That's a good idea.
You might have a nice meal, but the thing is, there's something about seeing a band that makes it special, and it really lives in your mind, and that's why the books work. Because because they carry emotional power when you're seeing a band, and so you love the place you saw them, and it says something.
They become part of you, don't they? They
Absolutely,
really
yeah.
do, and some of them literally
And
become
if you
part
want-
of you.
And if you want to, if you want to like venues to keep going, the only thing you can do is go out and watch bands, because it's down to you actually to make the venues
Exactly,
happen
yeah.
by going and watching them.
Go and see live bands,
music
yeah.
can't exist without an audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Any more questions, or should we? Oh, there we go. Look, yeah.
If I can ask a question about punk more than about venues, but I was reading recently that women were really well represented in punk, and I assumed that it is probably a misogynistic alpha male environment, and I just wondered what your thoughts were if women were well represented both in the audience and on the stage.
Well, they were. I mean, they were definitely. I mean, well, Tim's band, your bass player.
I think most the difference was that women just decided they were going to do it, whatever the convention was, and but I still think it's kind of a cliche that there was a lot of women in punk rock, but actually the percentage break was not that much different than in any other music environment. I don't think, I think it's trumped because you've got bands like the Slits, and I don't remember any women in the Skids.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And Susie, and of course Gay in the adverts. But so you tend to remember these characters. But when you look at pop music generally, there's quite a few women around. I think it was still a very much a male-dominated industry. Even in punk itself.
She's a punk rocker UK by singing Zilla from Rivella Ballet. And that's
Zilla,
all
yeah.
about the women, because Gay's in that film.
Yeah, Zilla was a real kind of like figurehead.
If you go and if whoever's interested in that goes and looks at that, there's a lot more about women in punk.
Yeah, well, Zilla still does say.
Yeah, still doing
she's
it.
still
Yeah,
doing it.
absolutely. Yeah, no, she's brilliant. And there's loads of. I mean, you can pick loads of women in punk rock. I mean, there's some good films about it. Helen and Gina did a really great film, which the name is going to escape me now because of Red Stripe. But the Helen McCookery book from the Chefs. And Helen the Horns and Gina from the Raincoats did a film recently, which is brilliant. Which totally, it enlarges, what sort of women in punk rock did. And obviously, this is a poison chalice, isn't it? Obviously, as soon as I start talking about this, I'm going to hide into nothing here. But no, of course, there were loads of brilliant women in music, but they were in the minority. There's no doubt about it. There were loads more old blokes, or young blokes jumping about than there were women. Understandably, because it was bloody horrible, most of it, and they were in the back of a shitty van playing shitty venues for no money, and just getting pissed and falling over. And I imagine most women at that point thought, "Oh no, you enjoy yourself," So
So Paul, what are your top 5 venues still going?
Oh, right. 100 Club, number 1. Okay. New Crossing, number 2. Yeah, definitely. I do sort of, it's a bit of love-hate relationship with a bird's nest in Deptford, because it's still nice and grotty and all that. Yeah, and it's good as well. So, we're getting to 3 there.
O'Meara?
O'Meara?
The where, sir?
O'Meara?
No.
No?
Anchor?
Well, I see some of the obvious ones I barely forget about. Yeah, there's Rockaway Beach Nights down there. Tim does, fantastic. So that would be a definite 4th, and then there's I used to say Borderline, but they did it up and it was pretty rubbish, and then it's gone now as well, isn't it?
Dome's still good.
Yeah,
Dome's still
yeah,
good.
Tufnell Park,
Tufnell
Boston
Park,
Arms,
Dome.
yeah.
Yeah,
They've done that up now, like they
it's
downstairs, the old boozer downstairs.
It's a good place to play, and it always was. I mean, there was some fantastic
upstairs and downstairs.
Yeah, absolutely. There were some fantastic gigs there in the 90s. I mean, New Bomb Turks, first ever gig in the UK was there. And New Bomb Turks were just like the most exciting band I'd ever seen at that point. There was 26 people there. And,
Yeah, I saw Fugazi there.
Yeah,
Great
yeah,
gig,
yeah, Fugazi upstairs.
Census
yeah.
things and all that.
Fugazi had double sold it. They'd sold out somewhere else and it had moved there. And
SOAS, yeah.
Well,
They-
SOAS.
They still have bands there, you know, sometimes, you know, or live music at least.
It's not. That's why it's not in the book.
Yeah.
But SOAS
Yeah.
was amazing.
Yeah.
Mudhoney played there.
Cheap bar as well.
Cheap Bar. Mudhoney played there in 90.
89, I think it was. I've got
Was it
I've got the
89?
ticket.
Oh, there you go. 89 was it? Blimey. Yeah. Okay. So 89, Mudhoney played there. They invited the whole crowd on stage, and the stage collapsed. I was on the stage. It was wonderful. Just brilliant. Mudhoney, one of the great bands.
I mean, sometimes it's hard though, because I went to ULU, SOAS, and all
Yeah,
that.
ULU.
It all mingles in. I'm thinking, did I see Census Things there? Did I see Rollins there? And all those sort of people. And like, some of these things
Yeah,
get very...
Rollins
you
might have
know,
been SOAS. Yeah.
Yeah,
There was a few. There was
Bad
about-
Brains, maybe.
Yeah, there was quite a lot of gigs
Yeah.
at SOAS, but there were
Getting off
there
on
were
too
yeah,
far,
yeah,
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
it's just like this is just like us in the pub.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we're trying to be
Mega City 4, yeah.
trying to be a bit more entertaining than saying Mega City 4 and Snuff all the time.
Nothing wrong with Snuff, yeah.
Nothing wrong. Of course, there's nothing wrong with Snuff. We saw Snuff at every venue in the book, apart from the old ones, obviously. Shall we stop the cues and go on with the the A's? One more to talk about. What do you want to do? And he might be around the pub afterwards. But you know, we're trying. If everyone wants to get their book signed tonight, it's going to take till about 3 in the morning. But you know, try your best.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. So, Davis Theatre is an interesting one.
Yeah. That sounds surprised.
Not
but, you know.
rehearsed at all.
Yeah.
What about the Davis Theatre?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, 'cause, yeah, I just thought of that. Yeah.
Well, I know you're doing an album about like the Croydon sort of new wave punk thing.
I am indeed, yeah.
And there's
So-
a film about it coming
There's a
up.
film, Are You Hostile? Are They Hostile?
Yeah, but there's a lot of venues in both of these books, you know, in Croydon.
Absolutely.
I'll go do a
Croydon-
walk.
Croydon's a
I'll
rock
do
and
a
roll-
little
rock and
guided
roll
walk
mecca.
around there. And what I love about this, the Davis Theatre, built in 1928, was at the time the second largest cinema to be built in England, was seating for 3,700 people. Elaborately constructed theatre was equipped to show films and host ballet and stage productions. The London Philharmonic Orchestra played in 1939. In 1944, a wartime bomb killed 6 audience members, that only caused minimal damage to the theatre. Reopened soon after the war. But then we're getting in, you know, fast forward here through the orchestral performances, and we're getting to world class. Frankie Lane, Maurice Chevalier, Johnny Ray, poor old, Eartha Kitt, Paul Anka, Louis Armstrong, Mario Lanza, Count Basie, Gracie Fields, and Liberace. But then rock and roll arrived in Croydon when Bill Haley and the Comets played the Davis Theatre for 2 nights in 1957. A local paper reported that police would be on duty inside and outside the venue should Haley's fans decide to repeat a riot that occurred when he arrived at Waterloo Station a few days beforehand. When I was researching this, I got a load of old Croydon newspapers down at British Library. I was going through them, and there was horror. This was a big event of antisocial behaviour of Bill Haley and the Comets coming to Croydon. You know, so yeah, it's never been any antisocial behaviour in Croydon ever since. Those people who live there, of course. And
It's a wonderful place.
yeah, Buddy Holly and the Crickets, Cliff Richard and Guy Mitchell played there during the late 50s. Closed down in 1959. Yeah, what a great old concert to finish with, Ella Fitzgerald. And they put a plaque up in 2004. The Cinema Theatre Association commented that the Davis Theatre is possibly the greatest architectural loss Croydon has sustained. Because it's just a 1970s office block there now, So yeah, it's a sad one, but we want to highlight these places, not just central London, but as I did with Romford, the Albemarle, but all these others,
Yeah, well, that was what we were trying to.
Yeah.
We weren't trying to be
inside the M25.
Yeah, you can see
even Dartford. Yeah,
absolutely, dirty Dartford.
Dirty Dartford.
Dirty Dartford. But yeah, you can, obviously we can all worry about the, the Roxy and the, all the punk venues and everything, because that's what we grew up with. But these venues, this is where our mums and dads went, and our aunties and uncles. and there's so many brilliant ones, and it must have been amazing. I can't believe that, you know, my mum saw the Beatles in Walthamstow. Yeah, doesn't make sense, does it? You know, Beatles in Walthamstow, and they were, you know, they weren't like, you know, it wasn't 1961 when they were like doing a support gig to Snuff. It was actually like, you know, when they were in the chart, and bands in the chart. An interesting thing, again, not wanting to mention Slade too many times, but Slade, when they were number one in 1972, were doing the tour of the North Circular pretty much. They played in Leytonstone.
Sundown. Yeah.
Yes, Leytonstone, Edmonton, the Cooks Ferry Inn.
Yeah.
They basically toured, instead of doing one, you know, doing the O2.
And then they went to USA on tour, and then the Sundown opened in Mile End,
Yeah.
and the promoters paid for them to fly back from the USA to Mile End, and then just one gig, and then they flew back to USA again.
Yeah, and as you would, because they were the best band at that time, you know, and the Sweet, obviously, who were wonderful. But, you know, it's sort of, you know, I've completely forgotten what I was saying now. Yeah.
He told me not to drink too much.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I really didn't. But no, I mean, you know, it's kind of interesting that, you know, there is. What's great about the books is that I've learned things as well, you know, about different venues from before our time and after.
And the photos are great.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny how seeing a photo of a hole where a venue used to be could be so poignant.
And I remember when we first started talking about the book, and it was like, well, all I've got is this like bit of hoarding and a gap, and it was like, yeah, that's going to be.
Yeah,
it's
but
not going to be a great
people
book,
ask
is it?
what. Yeah, that's what inspired me. We're always these pub conversations. People say, "What's that now? What's that now?"
Yeah.
They don't know, do they?
And I think that is what's interesting. It's like, you know,
rather than just a band playing on stage at the time. There's plenty of those photos, but not.
Well, yeah,
what they are now.
Which kind of leads us on to the very last one we're going to do, and it is actually 39 seconds past our time, but you know, that's always like, you know, it's supposed to be good. We were going to talk about the Fulham Greyhound, and is that back open now?
No,
it's still not.
I went down there, went by there the other day, and it's still vacant, so to speak. It turned into some sort of South African.
Fulham Greyhound was a really important venue on the circuit in the late through the 70s and 80s, but for us around the sort of 86 to.
But beforehand, as well, like that's where, you know, like as I say, from the late 50s, backroom of this pub was a home for Irish traditional music. Reg Hall recorded an album with Jimmy Power there, Irish Dancing in 1966. Anyone there? No. Anyway, there's also a folk club here in the late 60s, hosting artists like Alex Campbell, The Young Tradition, and Shirley Collins. In the 1970s and 80s, with landlord Duncan Ferguson, the Fulham Greyhound was mainly a rock venue. Acts in the 1970s included UFO, Supertramp, Electric Light Orchestra, Judas Priest, Status Quo, Uriah Heep, and Bob Marley and the Wailers. In the late 70s, Iron Maiden, Eddie and the Hot Rods, Budgie, and AC/DC. The Jam played an early gig here, supporting Stackridge, where the Stackridge fans pelted them with turnips. Yeah, like different, Rick Buckler's table, Paul Weller's table, Bruce Foxton's table, and no one spoke.
Weller's dad probably maybe had a deal there or something.
Yeah. Anyway, they talk about through the 80s, the pub hosted numerous acts most nights of the week, including They Might Be Giants, Fields and Nephilim, Mega City 4, Jesus Jones, Wedding Present, My Bloody Valentine, Dinosaur Jr., The Sundays, The Stone Roses, The Lars and Lush. I talk about the Culture Shock gig, which saw 1,000+ people turning up to the 800 capacity venue. Crowd control outside the venue broke down and a riot ensued. Police pulled the plug and hundreds of disappointed punks drifted away, not so quietly, resulting in 15 injured police and 68 arrests. Actually, I was promoting a gig that night just down the road at Opera on the Green in Shepherd's Bush. It sounds pretentious, that name, but it wasn't. And the venue. And with it,
old toilets, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, no, it was a pub actually called the Trafalgar. Yeah, yeah. It could well have been though. And we had Guitar Gangsters and Exploited playing, and somehow, I don't know how, mobile phones, how we knew, but sent a mate up in the car, and he was ferrying people from the the Culture Shock gig down to Exploited gig.
Involved.
Bit of live music, yeah. So we're doing a service, chariot service, Anyway, it goes on there. All these different bands that played early into early 90s. Some of the people that played there, Silverfish, TV Smith and Fudge Tunnel played here, but the pub then shut down. It later became a comedy club called The Puzzle. And until recently, Southern Belle, an American themed bar with American-sized pool tables and a private karaoke room. At the time of writing, the premises are empty. That was a couple of years ago, and the same goes for that now. I never went to it when they had the private karaoke rooms, I must admit. But as a Fulham Greyhound, it sometimes got really sweaty in
It was
there.
really hot. I mean, it was one of
The Mega City 4 gig once, so it's just water dripping off the ceiling.
It was one of the hottest gigs I've ever been to. I
And
think
Dave Ferguson with a pint glass stuck to his head, someone chucked at him, yeah.
Yeah, you remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was this chap called Dave Ferguson who was the pink punk. He had like a big Mohican, charged you £1 to take a photo. And
And a dog called Gyro, didn't
and
he?
a dog called Gyro, indeed. And he came running out. I think it was a Hard-Ons. I think it was a Hard-On, Snuff and various other bands.
Snuff again.
Snuff again. They were a wonderful band. If you never saw Snuff, you've really missed out. But anyway, he came out and he came out and he was like, "Oh, how you doing?" He had a glass stuck in his head, an actual glass, not plastic, a glass, and obviously he was inebriated enough and anaesthetised enough that he didn't even know. And I looked at him and I went, "You've got glass stuck in your head," and he went, pulled it out, and then went, "Fucking hell," and went piling back into the venue. Happy times. So that's my memory of the Fulham Greyhound. Anyone got any better memories of the Fulham Greyhound? Anyway, so that's the last one we actually planned, as you may have guessed. So any more questions before we call it a day and Paul tries to sign some books?
What's your next book going to be?
Can I tell him?
It's a secret.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a secret, but it's going to be...
We're working on it,
We're working.
but we don't want anyone else really,
Nick the idea.
even when I've done all this sort of stuff, I kept a bit of a lid on it, because some people do sort of... the Lost Rivers thing back in 2011 when that came out, even we kept a lid on that, and other people found out and were doing their own Lost Rivers books and all this sort of stuff, so...
It's,
London's Lost, Some people I've personally spoken to in a pub know what I'm talking about here, but I can't really...
London's lost memory.
Yeah.
London's
It's
lost...
not London's Lost restaurants, though. Yeah.
London's lost curbs.
Yeah.
There's some amazing curbs we've missed. We've lost over the years. Drop curbs have replaced a lot of things, and there's some lovely ones we've lost. And I think you'll all be back for that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. It will evoke some memories, definitely.
Absolutely. So it's been fantastic. Thank you all for turning up, and thank you Paul and Tim TV Smith for coming along and doing the set, and it's been wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Before you all go, we thought it'd be really cool to take a photo of Paul with you all maybe holding the books up or something, like them proper gigs. And I'll take the photo, and if you could hold your books up or something like that.
Okay. And then I'll go to the front to do some signings and all that. I will have a quick slash on the way though.
Yeah, I need a
someone
wee.
can bring me a can out.
I need a
from
wee
the
as well.
room upstairs. But yeah.
I'll get a red stripe, and
Yeah.
I definitely need a wee as well. 84. I'm 84.
Yeah.
I've just found a drumstick. There were no drums involved tonight. Why is there a drumstick?
That's why it went smoothly. Yeah.
I think that might be someone famous. That could be like, look at the books. Anyway. Right, photo. You've got to stand up.
I've got to stand up.
Well, wonderful.
Look at that. It's all going to be very dark.
Obviously the lights. Is it possible to turn the lights down a little bit? Oh, brilliant. Thank you. That's perfect.
We lost it.
Out. That'll do. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Hang on, one more. Do you want to get into the one with
Yeah,
one with Tim?
yeah. Actually, we could probably. Yeah, this is all right.
You could go down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit, yeah.
I've got mine. Pay attention. Hey. Thank you all. Cheers.
Thank you.
We're about to start the signing. Could you please make your way over to the left hand side of the shop and we'll start the queue for tonight's signing.